If you've had a difficulty with a business, organization, or experience, one of the best ways to encourage change can be to write a professional, well-organized, respectful, and detailed complaint letter. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. My name's Erin Lebax. I'm with High Value Writing. When we want to make a change somewhere, it helps to express our opinion. But we have the biggest impact when we do that with detail and organization and the right approach. So let's look at the best way to write a complaint letter to help someone understand what you may have experienced and what needs to change. If you're watching this video to prepare for an exam writing in English, you can also use this approach to organize your complaint letter for that purpose. So here's what we'll talk about in this video. We'll go through all the steps of a complaint letter, whether you're going to be writing and sending a physical letter or writing and sending an email. Most of the time I'll have the same advice for both, but I'll add in a couple of tips for emailing specifically when we get to those moments. We'll be looking overall at your heading, your greeting at the top there, then the body, introductory paragraph, body, concluding paragraph, then the sign off, and possibly if you are emailing, whether you might include attachments and links to explain what you're talking about and what I might recommend you attach if you choose to do that. Let's jump right into it. We'll be using a few different example topics as we go. Writing your heading is different if you're doing a physical letter or an email. So two different ideas for this one. A physical letter, you begin with your own information. I'll have an example at the end putting all of this together. Your name, your address, phone number, email, a space, the date, a space, all of that same contact info for the receiver, the person you're writing to. That will be your heading for a written letter that you print and send. If it's an email, of course, you'll use the heading in your email program, but I would highly recommend using a two-part subject line in a particular way to help ensure your message gets opened. Two-part subject lines, here's an explainer on that if you'd like to learn more, really help our reader notice what's wrong, notice this letter is for them, this email is for them, and they increase open rates of letters. So a couple ways I might do that: complaint, restroom access, complaint, train station staff, or about what you want changed. Request, increase accessibility. Request, improve customer service. So our heading, we're doing this kind of formally to show that we are doing a professional complaint and get the most attention and understanding from our reader possible. Then we move on to the greeting, where I would recommend being fairly formal again. We're writing to someone we don't know, and we're doing it in a business way. We're trying to encourage them to take action. So using a formal greeting is probably a good idea in your letter or your email. We can usually use dear, to, or hello, and then use a comma or a colon at the end. So a few examples: dear Mr. or Ms. Anderson, dear management team, to whom it may concern, hello Dr. Nguyen, to the customer service team at Hotel X, whatever the name is, or hello Director Ruiz. You may know the person you're writing to, you may know their name, you may not. So we can go with the name, with the position, right? The management, the staff role that they have, or we can go with to the committee, to whom it may concern if we really aren't sure. But we're being formal in any of those. So let's get to, I think, the most important part of this letter, which is the introductory paragraph. This is where we say what's wrong and why are we writing, what do we want. I would suggest including 3 to 4 pieces of information in your introductory paragraph. In some cases, you may not have too many more paragraphs after this. You may feel this explains everything, you're good to hit send or put your letter in the mail. After this, I'll share how to do body paragraphs if you are going to have more paragraphs. But regardless, here are one, and then we'll look at another, examples of an introductory paragraph that lets people know where and when did this happen, right? What was the setting? What happened? Why does this matter? This is key. This is often what people leave out in a complaint letter. What were the consequences, effects, impacts? Why is this important, right? And then you may also have a request. Maybe you want a refund, a reimbursement, a call back. You'd like to see them make a change. You'd like to see them follow a regulation that you don't think they're following. So if you have something that you're asking for, that would be that fourth piece. Here's how this one turned out. And you can see all the 4 pieces in there. On June 19th, 2025, my brother and I visited your restaurant to watch the World Cup on your large screen TVs. While we enjoyed the food and service, we found the restrooms hard to navigate with my brother's wheelchair. The entrance is too small and there isn't sufficient space to easily turn the chair around when entering or exiting restroom stalls. We actually had to leave early. We request you make the restroom fully accessible to all customers. So I followed the 4 steps. There were actually 2 places there where I also snuck in something to kind of connect with the reader or show respect to the reader to increase the chances that they're going to care about and respond to my message. Number 1 is I said, while we enjoyed the food and service, right? So I'm reasonable. I'm not complaining about everything. I recognize what you're doing well, but I'd like this problem changed. It gives us more credibility when we do these respect moves. Also, we actually had to leave early. That's a money loss for the restaurant if people will be leaving because they can't use the restrooms. So that's another way to clarify why my message should matter to them, not only because it's right, but because their business relies on it. Okay, second example, different topic. On September 3rd, 2025, I passed through your train station when transferring train lines on my way to visit my parents. When I couldn't find my train, I asked 2 different staff persons for help. They both acted very inconvenienced and barely answered my question. Travelers should be able to get support from staff while traveling. I would suggest talking with your team about customer service and sharing some strategies for talking with customers. All right, that may be your whole letter in some cases, but in many cases, you'll want to give more detail, and that's what the body paragraphs are for. Maybe you have 1 body paragraph, 2 or 3, depending on how many complaints or details you have to share. I would suggest on every body paragraph that you use a good topic sentence that lets the reader know, what is this paragraph for? What will I be telling you? Here's a reviewer on how to do a really strong topic sentence that gets your reader's attention and helps them understand what you're trying to talk about. On this slide, I share, share an example of that. On the next slide, I'll share an example of an outline. What would you put in the different paragraphs? I usually suggest 1 problem or example per paragraph, or 1 paragraph on the problems and 1 on your recommendations for solutions. So here's an example of a body paragraph using a topic sentence. Interacting with customers is a huge part of any staff member's job in a busy place like a train station. However, when I asked for directions to my train, the first person I asked was very dismissive and said he wasn't sure. The next person I asked seemed busy and annoyed about dealing with my question. This added to my nervousness about finding my train, showing again a little bit of a consequence. So that would work for 1 body paragraph, but let's talk about kind of an outline for how you might choose what to put in your body paragraphs. Here are 2 options. First of all, what was wrong? Let me tell you more about the spacing problem in the restroom. What happened? Next paragraph, what's needed? Let me tell you how much space is required by law and by the logical movement of a wheelchair. And then 1 paragraph, here's what I would like to see you do. Or the other example, maybe we have 1 paragraph on an interaction with staff member A, 1 paragraph about staff member B, and then 1 paragraph on, this is why I would like to see your group have some training on customer service, etc. They're all tying back to our main point of what went wrong and what we'd like to see be different. The conclusion is another great opportunity to connect with your reader, get their respect, get their buy-in to what you're talking about. And what I would suggest here are either 2 or 3 steps for this paragraph: a thank you statement, a courtesy statement of some kind recognizing their time, suggested next steps, kind of reviewing what you mentioned you'd like to see next. And if you are looking for a response or a payback or a call, how to do that, right? How would be their next steps for that? So a couple of examples here, one where I do include a next step on getting back to me and one where I don't. Thank you for your attention and consideration of the needs of guests who use wheelchairs. I hope you will review accessibility requirements and reconfigure your restrooms immediately. Or, thank you for your time in reading this letter. I would like to see the train station staff members treat all visitors with respect and friendliness. If you would like to contact me for more details about my visit, you can reach me in this way, right? So that's if you want a follow-up. Whether or not you want a follow-up, though, we do need to sign off, and this will be similar in a letter or email, but with an email, of course, you do have the opportunity for attachment and links. So the sign-off, I would suggest, again, fairly formal. We're being respectful because then we get more credibility and we get more response typically. And so we can do sincerely, thank you for your consideration, with appreciation, best regards, something to the effect of sincerely from me, thank you for reading this letter, right? But we don't know this person, and that's why we're keeping it kind of formal. All of these can just end with a comma, and then you have your name on the next line, or if it's printed, your signature with your name under it. But if you're emailing, and right after this, we'll put all the steps together into a big example. If you're emailing, you have the opportunity to add evidence or resources. Usually, in my mind, these come in 2 categories. Evidence of what happened, showing, illustrating what exactly happened, what are the measurements, what are the photos, and or showing them what needs to change. Here is a law or regulation. Here is a measurement you should look at. Here is a link to more information on that rule. So consider photographic or video evidence, and consider documentation or laws and links to what needs to be done differently. All right, let's put it all together. This will be a 2-pager, 2-slider here to get through all of the steps. And so you'll see I'm doing a written letter here. I have my whole heading, my information, space, the date, space, their information, and then I get to my greeting. Dear Funtown City Council, I don't have a specific person I'm writing to, but I like this better than to whom it may concern because it is targeted at my reader, even though it's the whole city council. And this is a new topic example. So walks through all the steps. On October 9th, 2025, I drove down Q Street and nearly got in an accident while passing 11th Street. I noticed there are no stop signs for drivers coming north or south on 11th Street. This is a hazard for the many drivers who use Q Street to drive to or from work every day. So that was my opening paragraph. I'll add quickly, if you're doing an email, here are a couple of suggested subject lines. If you're doing an email, you wouldn't have the same heading necessarily. You would have the email heading, but I would suggest that 2-part subject line: dangerous intersection, Q and 11th, complaint, city intersection, something like that. All right, let's go to page 2. Body paragraph, concluding paragraph, sign off. When I was driving east on Q Street, I was nearly hit by a car coming north on 11th. This driver didn't have a stop sign and so nearly drove out into the street when I was right there. I can see how other drivers might have the same issue due to the lack of a stop sign. Major city intersections like Q and 11th need stop signs to prevent dangerous accidents. I request you consider adding a stop sign for drivers on 11th in both the north and south directions. Thank you for your time and consideration. and then I sign it, and I've put my name, and I added Funtown resident to show why is this relevant, what is my part in this whole role. All right, and then finally, if I was doing an email and I wanted to use links and attachments, I might include photos of that intersection without the stop signs. I might include a link to a city regulation about how we try to keep our intersections safe. All right, so those are the steps of a complaint letter. If you go through that whole process, it makes your letter very professional and respectful, which increases the chances of getting a good result. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll be happy to get back to you. And if you try this out, let me know how it goes. I hope you have success in making the change you're trying to make. Thank you for watching.